The dimly lit restaurant falls into an eerie silence as Maya's hand trembles, the wine bottle nearly slipping from her grasp. Antonio Lorenzo sits before her, the most feared man in New York's underworld, his dark eyes fixed on hers with an intensity that makes her breath catch. She shouldn't say anything. She should pour the wine, collect her tip, and walk away like she's been trained to do. But the words burning on her tongue refuse to stay silent. They found you, she whispers, her voice barely audible over the classical music playing softly in the background. Antonio's entire body goes rigid, his hand, which had been casually resting on the table, slowly curls into a fist. What did you say? Maya's heart pounds so violently she's certain he can hear it. She glances toward the kitchen where two men in chef uniforms watch them with cold, calculating eyes. Eyes that don't belong to any chef she's ever worked with. Her brown skin prickles with goosebumps as recognition dawns on Antonio's face. He understands. And now there's no going back. Run. She breathes just as the lights go out. 3 hours earlier, Maya Morrison had been worried about nothing more dangerous than making rent. She adjusted her black server's apron for the third time, checking her reflection in the polished chrome of the kitchen door. Her natural curls were pulled back into a neat bun, though a few rebellious spirals had already escaped to frame her face. The late shift at Carmelo's, one of Manhattan's most exclusive Italian restaurants, wasn't glamorous, but it paid better than her morning job at the diner in the Bronx. Table 12 just seated, Marcus the host called out. VIP section, big tipper, apparently. Maya grabbed her order pad and made her way through the elegant dining room, her worn shoes silent on the plush carpet. Carmelo's catered to New York's elite, celebrities, politicians, and people whose names never appeared in newspapers for good reasons. She'd learned early not to ask questions, not to stare, and definitely not to remember faces. But the man at table 12 was impossible to forget. Antonio Lorenzo sat alone in the private corner booth, his presence commanding the space like a king surveying his domain. He wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than Maya made in 6 months. The crisp white shirt open at the collar revealing a glimpse of olive skin. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble. Strong jaw, prominent nose, and eyes so dark they appeared almost black in the ambient lighting. He couldn't have been more than 35, but he carried himself with the confidence of someone who'd seen and conquered worlds. Maya had seen him before, though never this close. Everyone in New York knew Antonio Lorenzo, even if they pretended not to. The youngest head of the Lorenzo crime family, the man who'd unified the cities wearing factions through a combination of ruthless strategy and unexpected mercy. He was danger personified, wrapped in expensive Italian wool. Good evening, Maya said, proud that her voice remained steady. Can I start you with something to drink? Antonio's gaze lifted from his phone, and Maya felt the full force of his attention like a physical touch. He studied her face for a moment, not with the leering assessment she'd grown accustomed to from male customers, but with genuine interest, as if he were trying to memorize her features. Burlo, he said, his voice deep and smooth with just a hint of an accent. The 2015 if you have it, of course. Maya noted it down, acutely aware that he was still watching her. I'll be right back with that. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. What's your name? Maya hesitated. Rule number 1, don't get personal with customers, especially not customers like Antonio Lorenzo. But something in his tone wasn't a command. It was almost curious. Maya, she answered. Maya, he repeated as if testing how her name felt in his mouth. A slight smile curved his lips. Beautiful name. It means elder sister in some African languages, doesn't it? She blinked in surprise. Most people at Carmelo's barely saw her as human, much less took interest in the meaning of her name. Ah yes, my mother was into African heritage. Smart woman. Antonio gestured to the seat across from him. Sit with me for a moment. I can't. I'm working. I own this restaurant, he said simply. Sit. It wasn't a request. Maya's pulse quickened as she slid into the booth, keeping her distance, but unable to ignore the magnetic pull of his presence. Up close, she could see the faint scar along his left eyebrow, the shadow of exhaustion beneath his eyes, despite his composed demeanor. "You're afraid of me," Antonio observed. It wasn't a question. Should I be? His dark eyes gleamed with something that might have been amusement. "Most people are, but you still approached my table without hesitation, looked me in the eye when you spoke. That takes courage or stupidity. I don't think you're stupid. Maybe I just need the job too much to be scared."
Ah,
He leaned back, studying her with renewed interest. "Honesty rare in my world. Tell me, Maya, how long have you worked here?" "6 months. I do the late shift 3 nights a week." "And the other nights?" She shouldn't answer, shouldn't engage, but something about the way he asked, genuine interest rather than idle curiosity, loosened her tongue. "Morning shift at a diner in the Bronx. Community college classes, when I can afford them." Antonio's expression shifted, something almost like respect flickering across his features. "What are you studying?" "Business management. I want to open my own restaurant someday. Something for my neighborhood, you know." Not she gestured around Carmelo's opulent interior. "Not this. Something real." "Real?" he echoed softly. "When was the last time someone spoke to me about something real?" He seemed to be talking more to himself than to her, then refocusing. "Get my wine, Maya, and then we'll talk more." She escaped to the wine cellar, her hands shaking as she selected the bottle. This was insane. Antonio Lorenzo didn't chat with waitresses. Men like him didn't care about community colleges or dreams of opening neighborhood restaurants. What was his angle? As she reached for the Barolo, she heard voices in the kitchen, low, urgent, speaking in Italian. Maya's mother had been a romantic who'd made her daughter learn 3 languages for the cultured life you'll have one day. Italian had been one of them. "Arriva all'Adi Lorenzo non lascerist posto vivo." He arrives at 10. "Lorenzo won't leave this place alive." Maya froze, the wine bottle clutched to her chest. She glanced at her watch. 9:47 p.m. Her mind raced. She should run. Get out of the restaurant and never look back. This wasn't her business, wasn't her world. Antonio Lorenzo had probably made 1,000 enemies. He knew the risks of his life. But when she closed her eyes, she saw his face. The way he'd listened when she talked about her dreams, the respect in his eyes when she'd been honest with him. Real, he'd called it. Maybe just once in his dangerous life, someone had treated him like a person instead of a monster. Maya made her decision. She grabbed the wine and 2 glasses, her heart hammering as she returned to table 12. Antonio was on his phone, speaking in rapid Italian, but he ended the call when she approached. "Your BOLO," she said, setting down the glasses with hands that only trembled slightly. She poured his wine, then, breaking every protocol, poured a second glass. Antonio raised an eyebrow. "Joining me? You said we'd talk more." Maya sat down, gripping the wine glass like a lifeline. She had 13 minutes. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to not react."
can you do that?
Something in her tone made him go very still. "I'm listening. There are 2 men in the kitchen. They're not real staff. I heard them speaking Italian. They said." She swallowed hard, forcing herself to meet his eyes. "They said, you won't leave this place alive. Someone's arriving at 10 o'clock." The silence that followed was deafening. Antonio's face remained impassive, but Maya saw the minor changes, the tension in his jaw, the way his fingers tightened almost imperceptibly around his wine glass, the calculating look that transformed him from the curious man she'd been talking to into something far more dangerous. "Why are you telling me this?" His voice was soft, deadly calm. "Because you asked me about real things," Maya said simply. "And because nobody deserves to die over dinner." Antonio studied her for a long moment, and Maya had the unsettling feeling he was seeing straight through to her soul. Then slowly he reached into his jacket. Maya's breath caught, but instead of a gun, he pulled out his phone and typed something rapidly. "Come with me," he said, standing and extending his hand. "Now I can't just leave my shift, Maya." The way he said her name sent shivers down her spine. "If you stay here, you become a witness, and witnesses in my world don't live long. So, unless you want to spend the rest of your short life looking over your shoulder, you'll take my hand and trust me." She looked at his outstretched hand, strong, scarred, offering both danger and protection. Every logical bone in her body screamed at her to refuse, but Maya Morrison had never been good at logic when her instincts were involved. She took his hand. Antonio pulled her close, his other arm wrapping around her waist in a gesture that would look romantic to any observer. When we reached the door, don't look back. My car is the black SUV directly in front. Get in the back seat and stay down. They moved through the restaurant as if they were simply a couple leaving after dinner. Maya's legs felt like jelly, but Antonio's firm grip kept her steady. She could feel the coiled tension in his body, the way his eyes constantly scanned their surroundings. They were 3 feet from the door when the lights went out. What will happen to Maya and Antonio in the darkness? Will his enemies catch them before they escape? And why would a powerful mafia boss spare a waitress who knows too much? The danger is just beginning, and the connection between them is about to become far more complicated than either of them imagined. Keep watching to discover how one warning will change both of their lives forever. Gunfire erupted in the darkness. Maya didn't have time to scream before Antonio's body slammed into hers, taking her to the ground as bullets shattered the glass doors above them. His weight crushed the air from her lungs, but his arms cradled her head, protecting her from the shower of debris raining down around them. Stay down, he commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos. Then, incredibly, he was moving, rolling off her, pulling a gun from beneath his jacket with the fluid grace of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. Maya's ears rang from the gunshots. In the emergency lighting that flickered on, she could see panic spreading through the restaurant. Customers screaming, diving under tables, running for back exits. But Antonio stood calmly in the center of the storm, returning fire with precise, controlled shots. Maya. His voice cut through her shock. The kitchen go. She scrambled to her feet, her server's shoes slipping on broken glass. Antonio provided cover fire as she ran, his body always between her and the shooters. They burst through the kitchen doors just as more armed men poured in from the back entrance. Murder. Antonio cursed under his breath. They were trapped. But Maya's 6 months at Carmelo's hadn't been wasted. This way, she grabbed his hand, pulling him toward what looked like a solid wall. If you're enjoying this story and want to see what happens next, please subscribe to our channel and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Your support means everything to us as we continue bringing these stories to life. She pressed a specific spot on the panel and it slid open. The secret passage the staff used to move between the wine cellar and kitchen without disturbing diners. Antonio's eyes widened with surprise and something that might have been admiration. After you, clever girl. They plunged into the narrow passage. Antonio closing the panel behind them just as bullets peppered the wall. The space was barely wide enough for one person, forcing them to press close together as they moved through the darkness. Maya could feel Antonio's heart pounding against her back, his breath warm on her neck. Keep going, he murmured. Don't stop until you reach the cellar. They emerged into the wine cellar and Antonio immediately pulled out his phone. The screen's glow illuminating his face. His calm demeanor never wavered even as more gunfire echoed from above. Diego, he said when someone answered. Carmelo's full assault. Yes, she's with me. His eyes found Maya's in the dim light. 2 minutes. Make it 1. He ended the call and moved to the cellar's exterior door, the delivery entrance that opened onto the alley. He checked outside. Gun raised, then turned back to Maya. When that door opens, you run to the black SUV, and you don't look back. Understand? What about you? The question escaped before she could stop it. Antonio's stern expression softened almost imperceptibly. Worried about me? I'm touched, but I've survived worse than this, Dalketsa. Now the cellar door exploded inward. This time Maya did scream. 3 men rushed in, guns drawn, and Antonio moved with lethal efficiency. He took down the first with 2 shots, used the second as a human shield against the third's bullets, then dispatched them both with ruthless precision. It was over in seconds. Maya stood frozen, her back pressed against the wine racks, staring at the bodies on the floor. She just watched Antonio Lorenzo kill 3 men without hesitation, without remorse. This was his world. Violence and death and cold calculation. Maya. His voice was gentle as he approached her, though he didn't lower his gun. Look at me, not them. She dragged her eyes to his face. In the aftermath of violence, Antonio looked different, older, harder, with blood splattered across his expensive suit. This was the man the city feared, the monster from the news reports, but his hand, when he reached for hers, was gentle. I'm sorry you had to see that, but they would have killed us both without a second thought. Do you understand? She nodded, not trusting her voice. Outside, tires screeched. Antonio pulled her toward the door, and suddenly they were in the alley. Crisp night air shocking her lungs. The black SUV's door flew open and strong hands pulled Maya inside. Antonio dove in after her, and the vehicle was moving before the door even closed. Status. Antonio demanded. The driver, a mountain of a man with a shaved head, responded without taking his eyes off the road. For wounded, none critical. The Bellini family claimed responsibility. They hit 3 of our locations simultaneously. They wanted to make a statement. Antonio's jaw clenched. They chose poorly. Diego, take us to the Grammar House. Station, a full security detail. No one in or out without my personal authorization. Boss, about the girl. She saved my life. Antonio's tone brooked no argument. She's under my protection now. Anyone who touches her answers to me personally. The weight of those words settled over Maya like a heavy blanket. Protection. She'd just become Antonio Lorenzo's responsibility, which meant she'd also become a target. Her normal life, her 2 jobs, her classes, her tiny studio apartment in the Bronx. All of it was gone in the span of an hour. I need to go home, she said, her voice smaller than she'd intended. My roommate will worry. I have class in the morning. You can't go home. Antonio's dark eyes found hers in the dim interior of the SUV. The Bellini family will have identified you by now. Every camera in that restaurant, every staff member, they'll know you warned me. Your home won't be safe. Then what am I supposed to do? Panic crept into a voice. I can't just disappear. I have responsibilities. Bills to pay. I'll handle it. He said it with such certainty, as if managing someone's entire life were a minor inconvenience. Your rent will be paid, your job's covered, your classes explained. You'll stay at my house until this is resolved. Stay at your Maya laughed, the sound edged with hysteria. I don't even know you. You know enough. You know I keep my word, and right now my word is the only thing standing between you and a bullet. His expression softened. I'm sorry, Maya. I truly am. But you involved yourself in my world when you warned me. Now I have to keep you safe. The SUV turned into an underground parking garage, descending several levels before stopping in a private section. Armed guards stood at attention as Antonio exited, then turned to help Maya out. His hand at her elbow was steady, grounding her as her legs threatened to give out. They took a private elevator to a penthouse. When the doors opened, Maya's breath caught despite everything. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the glittering Manhattan skyline. Modern furniture in blacks and grays created a masculine space that somehow managed to feel warm. Art that she suspected was worth millions adorned the walls. Guest suite is through there, Antonio said, gesturing to a hallway. Bathroom stocked. You'll find clothes in the closet. My sister stays here sometimes. Help yourself to anything you need. Maya stood in the center of the living room, feeling completely out of place in her stained server's uniform, her bun falling apart, still shaking from adrenaline. Why are you being so nice to me? Antonio paused in the act of removing his blood-stained jacket. Nice? She stopped herself, but he finished the sentence. A criminal, a killer, gay monster. He said the words without emotion. Yes, I'm all of those things, but I'm also a man who keeps his promises and protects what's his. And whether you like it or not, Maya Morrison, you're mine now, under my protection, my responsibility. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. And I take care of what's mine. There was something in his eyes, something dark and possessive, but also strangely vulnerable that made Maya's breath catch. She should be terrified. She should be demanding he let her go. But instead, she found herself asking, "What happens now?"
Now.
A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Now you rest. Tomorrow we figure out how to keep you alive long enough to open that restaurant of yours." He left her alone, then disappearing into another part of the penthouse. Maya made her way to the guest suite on autopilot, her mind still trying to process everything that had happened. The bedroom was larger than her entire studio apartment. The closet did indeed contain women's clothes, designer labels she'd only seen in magazines. She found a simple black t-shirt and sleep pants, then stood under the shower until the water ran cold, watching pink-tinged water circle the drain, unable to tell if it was blood or wine. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a plush robe that probably cost more than her monthly salary, she found a plate of food on the bedside table, pasta still warm with a note in elegant handwriting. "You should eat. The day has been long." Maya's eyes burned with unexpected tears. She was trapped in a gilded cage, protected by a man who killed without hesitation. Her entire life upended in a single night. But he'd remembered she hadn't eaten dinner. She picked up the fork and took a bite. The pasta was perfect. In the morning, she told herself she'd figure out how to escape this situation. She'd find a way back to her normal life, away from danger and darkness and men with blood on their hands and kindness in their eyes. But as she lay in the softest bed she'd ever experienced, staring at the Manhattan skyline through the windows, Maya knew the truth. There was no going back. Antonio Lorenzo had marked her as his, and in his world that was as permanent as death. The only question now was whether his protection would save her or destroy her. Maya's life has been turned upside down in a single night. Now she's under the protection of the city's most dangerous man, living in his penthouse and marked as his responsibility. But what will happen when the Bellini family comes for her? How will Antonio keep her safe when enemies surround them from all sides? And why does his fierce protection feel less like a prison and more like something else? The tension is about to reach a breaking point. Keep watching to see how their forbidden connection deepens. Maya awoke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the smell of fresh coffee. For a blissful moment, she forgot where she was. Then reality crashed back, the shooting Antonio, the bodies in the wine cellar. She sat up, her heart pounding, and found Antonio Lorenzo sitting in an armchair across from the bed, watching her with those dark, intense eyes. "How long have you been there?" she asked, pulling the blanket up to her chin despite being fully clothed in the borrowed pajamas. "An hour, maybe two," he said it casually, as if watching someone sleep were perfectly normal. "You have nightmares. You called out 3 times. Heat flooded Maya's cheeks. "You should have woken me." "I considered it, but you needed the rest." He stood, moving with that predatory grace she was beginning to recognize. "There's breakfast in the kitchen. We need to talk." She found him minutes later at the kitchen island, surrounded by laptops and phones. He'd changed into dark jeans and a black t-shirt that revealed the muscular build his suits had hidden. Without the armor of expensive clothing, he looked younger, more approachable, until you noticed the gun holstered at his hip and the cold calculation in his eyes as he studied whatever was on his screen. "Sit," he said without looking up.
Eat.
Maya slid onto a stool, eyeing the spread of food. Fresh fruit, pastries, eggs, bacon. "Did you make this?" "Diego brought it. I don't cook." Finally, he looked at her, and something in his expression softened. "How are you feeling?" "Like my life ended last night." The honesty surprised her, but after everything, what was the point of lying? Antonio's jaw tightened. "I'm sorry, truly, but we need to discuss the situation." He turned one of the laptops toward her. On the screen was a photo of her, grainy, taken from a security camera. "The Bellini family released this an hour ago. They're offering a reward for information on your whereabouts." $500,000? Maya's stomach dropped. $500,000 for me? Not for you. For what you represent. Antonio's voice was hard. "You're a message. If they can kill someone under my protection, they prove I'm weak in my world. Perception is everything." So, I'm just what? A pawn in your power games?
No.
The word came out sharper than she expected. Antonio leaned forward, his eyes boring into hers. You're a person who showed courage when it mattered, who saved my life when you could have run. I don't know why you did it, Maya, but I won't let you die for it. The intensity of his gaze made her breath catch. What's your plan? My plan is to eliminate the threat. The Bellini family made a mistake attacking me directly. Now I respond. He said it so matter-of-factly, as if planning violence were no different than scheduling a meeting. But that takes time. In the meanwhile, you stay here under guard until it's safe. How long? Could be days, could be weeks. Weeks? Maya stood abruptly, pacing the kitchen. I can't hide here for weeks. I have a life, responsibilities. You have a target on your back. Antonio's voice cracked like a whip. Then, visibly controlling himself, he continued more quietly. I've had Diego handle your obligations. Your jobs have been told you had a family emergency. Your roommate received a text from your phone explaining you'll be away. Your professors have been notified. I've paid your rent for the next 6 months. You can't just reorganize my entire life. I can and I did. He stood, moving around the island until he was close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something expensive and masculine. You're angry.
Good.
Be angry at me. Hate me if you want, but stay alive. Maya turned away, blinking back frustrated tears. You don't understand. I've worked so hard to build something, to be independent, and now you've taken all of that away. I took away your freedom to keep you breathing. His voice was gentler now, and she felt his hand, warm, careful, on her shoulder. When this is over, you'll have your life back. I promise you that. The promises of a criminal, she said bitterly. The promises of a man who keeps his word. She turned to face him, surprised by how close he was. Close enough to see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, the faint stubble along his jaw, the scar that bisected his left eyebrow. Close enough to see something she hadn't expected. Loneliness. Why do you care? She asked softly. Really? You could have left me at the restaurant, paid off the Bellini family to leave me alone. Why go to all this trouble? Antonio's hand fell from her shoulder, but he didn't step back. You want the truth? Always, because in that restaurant you saw me, not Antonio Lorenzo, head of the crime family, not the monster from the news, just me. You asked about real things and expected honest answers. Do you have any idea how rare that is in my world? His voice dropped to almost a whisper. Everyone wants something from me. Power, money, protection, revenge. But you just wanted to save my life. No agenda, no manipulation, just kindness. Maya's heart hammered in her chest. This close to him, she could see past the dangerous exterior to the man beneath, the one who'd sat with her and talked about dreams, who'd made sure she had dinner even after surviving an assassination attempt, who watched her sleep to make sure her nightmares didn't consume her. I'm not that special, she managed. You're wrong about that, Dalketsa. His hand came up, his thumb brushing her cheek in a gesture so tender it made her ache. You're extraordinary, and I will keep you safe, whatever it takes. The moment stretched between them, charged with something Maya couldn't name. Then Antonio's phone rang, shattering the spell. He stepped back, his expression closing off as he answered. What is it, Diego? A pause. When? Another pause, and this time his jaw clenched dangerously. I'll handle it. Increased security protocols. No one comes near her. He ended the call and turned back to Maya, his eyes hard. There's been a development. What kind of development? The Bellini family knows you're here. They've positioned snipers in the buildings across the street. He moved to the windows, studying the skyline with a tactical precision that reminded her exactly what he was. This location is compromised. How did they find us so fast? Money talks. Someone in my organization sold the information. He said it without emotion, but Maya heard the fury beneath his calm.
We need to move you now.
Where? I have a safe house off the grid. No one knows about it except Diego and my sister. He was already moving, pulling out his phone to make calls, issuing rapid orders in Italian. Pack only what you need. We leave in 10 minutes. Maya hurried to the guest room, her hands shaking as she grabbed clothes from the closet, a traitor in Antonio's organization. Snipers watching the building. This wasn't just danger. This was war. She emerged to find Antonio waiting by the elevator, dressed now in all black, multiple weapons visible. He looked like death incarnate. Scanned for the first time since she'd met him, Maya felt real fear not of him, but for him. "You're going to get yourself killed protecting me," she said. He looked at her, and something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or something deeper. "Would that bother you?" "Yes." The admission escaped before she could stop it. "It would." Antonio stepped closer, his hand coming up to cup her face. "Then I'll try very hard to stay alive, Dalketsa, for both our sakes." The elevator doors opened. Diego stood inside, armed and alert. "SUV is ready, boss. We've got a window of 60 seconds before the snipers get a clean shot. Then we don't waste time." Antonio's hand found Maya's, his grip firm and reassuring. "Stay close to me. Don't let go no matter what happens." They descended into the parking garage at high speed. The moment the doors opened, Antonio pulled her close, his body shielding hers as they ran for the waiting vehicle. Maya heard the crack of gunfire, felt Antonio jerk as he shoved her into the SUV. And then they were moving, tires screaming. "Boss, you're hit," Diego said, eyes on the rear view mirror. "Just a graze drive." But when Maya looked at Antonio, she saw blood seeping through his shirt, spreading across his left shoulder. "You're shot." "I've had worse." But his face was pale, jaw tight with pain. "Diego, there's a hospital." "No hospitals," Antonio said firmly. "The safe house has medical supplies. Diego stitched me up before. You need a doctor. I need to keep you safe." His dark eyes found hers intense despite the pain. "That's all that matters." Maya pressed her hand against his wound, trying to stench the bleeding. Antonio hissed, but didn't pull away. "You're insane. You know that?"
Probably.
A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "But I keep my promises, remember? I said I'd protect you. A bullet wound won't change that." They drove for an hour, weaving through traffic, doubling back, taking routes that made Maya dizzy. Finally, they pulled up to a modest brownstone in Brooklyn. Nothing that would attract attention, which was clearly the point. Diego helped Antonio inside while Maya hovered, useless and terrified. The safe house was small but well-equipped, and Diego worked with efficient precision, cleaning and stitching Antonio's wound while the Mafia boss sat stoically. Only the white, knuckled grip on the chair arm revealing his pain. "How bad?" Antonio asked when Diego finished. "You'll live.
Keep it clean.
Change the dressing twice a day. And for God's sake, boss, take it easy for a few days." Antonio snorted. "When this is over, I'm retiring to a beach somewhere. You've been saying that for 10 years. This time, I mean it." Antonio's eyes found Maya, who stood in the doorway, her hands still stained with his blood. "Diego, sweep the perimeter. Make sure we weren't followed." When they were alone, Maya moved to Antonio's side. "Let me help. You've done enough." But he didn't resist when she began cleaning the blood from his chest with gentle hands. "You took that bullet for me," she said softly. "I told you. You're under my protection. This is more than protection." Maya met his eyes, her heart hammering. "You could have sent me away with guards hidden me somewhere. Instead, you're here bleeding because you won't let me out of your sight." Antonio's hand caught hers, stilling her movements. "You want to know why?" "Yes, because I've spent my entire life surrounded by lies and betrayal. People who smile to my face and plot my death behind my back. But you," his thumb traced patterns on her wrist. "You're real. You're honest. You make me remember what it's like to be human instead of a monster. And I can't." He paused, something vulnerable crossing his face. "I can't let you go. Not yet." Maya's breath caught. This close, she could see every detail. The pain lines around his eyes, the way his hair fell across his forehead, the beating pulse at his throat. She should pull away, should remind herself that he was dangerous, that this was impossible, that she barely knew him. But instead, she whispered, I don't want to go. Antonio's eyes darkened. His hand came up, cradling her face with a gentleness that belied his reputation. You should. You should run as far from me as possible. I'm no good for you, Maya. I'm violence and darkness and death. You deserve sunshine and safety and normally. Maybe I'm tired of safe, she breathed. And then, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, Antonio leaned in and kissed her. It was nothing like she'd expected, not rough or demanding, but soft, almost reverent, as if she were something precious he was afraid to break. His lips were warm against hers, his hand gentle in her hair, and Maya melted into him, her hands finding his chest, careful to avoid his injury. When they finally broke apart, Antonio rested his forehead against hers, his breath shaky. This is a terrible idea. Probably the worst I've ever had. Maya agreed. We barely know each other. I know enough. I'm going to get you killed. You already took a bullet to prevent that. Antonio laughed softly, painfully. You're going to be the death of me, Deletza. Then we'll die together. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her against him despite the wound in his shoulder. Maya felt his heart beating against hers, steady and strong. And for the first time since the restaurant, she felt safe. But safety was an illusion in Antonio's world. And as the sun set over Brooklyn, casting long shadows through the safe house windows, neither of them knew that the Bellini family's next move would force them to face the ultimate test. How much were they willing to sacrifice for each other? The answer would change everything. Antonio took a bullet for Maya, and now the connection between them has exploded into something neither can deny. But the Bellini family isn't finished. They're planning something that will force both Maya and Antonio to make impossible choices. What's secret from Antonio's past is about to surface. And how will Maya prove that she's more than just a damsel in need of protection? The final confrontation is coming, and it will test everything they've built. Keep watching to see how their story reaches its explosive conclusion. For 3 days, they lived in the Brooklyn safe house like ghosts, existing between the real world and Antonio's dangerous one. Maya changed his bandages twice daily, her hands gentle on his skin. And Antonio told her stories about his life, his family, the choices that had led him down this dark path. I was 16 when my father died, he said one night, lying on the couch with his head in her lap, her fingers absently running through his hair. The family expected me to step up, to be strong. I didn't have time to grieve. I just had to survive. That must have been lonely, Maya said softly. It was until now. He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. You make me feel less alone. But their bubble of peace couldn't last forever. On the 4th day, Diego arrived with news that drained the color from Antonio's face. They have Vera. Antonio was on his feet instantly, ignoring the pull of his healing wound. When 2 hours ago, they grabbed her leaving her apartment. Clean operation. No witnesses. Diego's expression was grim. They're demanding a trade. Vera for the girl. Maya's blood turned to ice. Vera, Antonio's younger sister, the one whose clothes she'd been borrowing, whose room she'd been staying in. Who is Vera? My baby sister, 23, studying art history, never been involved in the family business. Antonio's voice was hollow. She's innocent, completely innocent. And the Bellini family took her to get to me. Then we make the trade, Maya said immediately.
No.
Antonio's voice was absolute. Not happening. She's your sister, and you're under my protection. He rounded on her, his eyes blazing. I won't trade one life for another. I'll find another way. There is no other way, Diego said quietly. They've given us 12 hours. After that, they'll start sending pieces of Vera back to us. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Antonio's hand curled into a fist, his knuckles white. Maya could see the war raging inside him. Duty to his sister versus his promise to protect her. Where's the exchange location? Antonio finally asked. The Old Canary, on the waterfront. Midnight? Diego hesitated.
Boss.
It's obviously a trap. They'll kill you both and keep Vera as leverage. Then I'll have to make sure that doesn't happen. Antonio was already moving, pulling weapons from hidden compartments, checking ammunition with practiced efficiency. Call everyone we can trust. I want snipers on every building teams in position 2 hours early. And get Leonardo on the phone. I need his technical expertise. What are you planning? Maya asked. Antonio paused, his eyes meeting hers. I'm planning to get my sister back and keep you alive. Both of you. Let me help. Absolutely not. You'll stay here with God. I won't. Maya stood, her voice firm despite her racing heart. This started because of me. I won't hide while you and your sister risk your lives. Maya, listen to me. She moved to stand before him, her hands on his chest. I've been nothing but a liability. Someone you have to protect, to shelter, to worry about. But I'm not helpless, Antonio. You've forgotten. I speak Italian. I know the streets of New York. And I'm the one thing the Bellini family wants. That makes me valuable. Antonio's jaw clenched. It makes you a target. I've been a target since the moment I warned you. She held his gaze, refusing to back down. Let me be part of the solution instead of the problem. Please trust me. For a long moment, Antonio studied her face. Then slowly he nodded. If, and this is a big if, you're involved, you follow my orders exactly. No improvisation. No heroics. Understood. Understood. Diego, get her a vest and someone teach her how to shoot. The next 8 hours were a blur of preparation. Leonardo, a tech genius who looked like he belonged in a college dorm rather than a crime family, set up communications and surveillance. Antonio's most trusted soldiers arrived in groups, each receiving detailed instructions. And Maya learned how to handle a gun. Not well, but enough to hit a target at close range. You're a natural, Diego said, watching her empty the magazine into the paper target. Steady hands. Years of balancing plates, Maya replied, trying to inject humor into the situation, but her hands were shaking and they both knew it. As midnight approached, Antonio pulled her aside. They stood in the safe house's small bedroom, and for a moment neither spoke. Then Antonio cupped her face in his hands, his eyes intense. If something goes wrong, he said, if things go south, I want you to run. Don't look back. Don't try to help. Just run. I won't leave you. Maya, I won't. She covered his hands with hers. I know this is crazy. I know we've only known each other for days, but I care about you, Antonio, and I'm not running. He pulled her into a fierce kiss, pouring everything he couldn't say into the contact. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. When this is over, Antonio said, we're going somewhere far away. Just you and me. No danger, no enemies, just us. Promise. I promise. They arrived at the cannery at 11:45. The abandoned building loomed against the night sky. Windows broken, walls covered in graffiti. It was the perfect place for an ambush or a last stand. Antonio's team moved into position silently. Snipers climbed to the surrounding rooftops. Leonardo set up surveillance equipment in a van parked 2 blocks away. And Maya, dressed in black with a bulletproof vest hidden under her jacket, stayed close to Antonio's side. At midnight exactly, headlights cut through the darkness. 3 black SUVs pulled up and armed men poured out. From the center vehicle emerged a man in his 60s, gay-haired and cruel-faced, Castellano Bellini, head of the rival family, and with him, looking terrified but unharmed, was a young woman with Antonio's dark eyes and elegant features. Vera. Antonio, Lorenzo. Castellano's voice carried across the empty space. Good to see you haven't lost your nerve. Antonio stepped forward, his hand finding Maya's and squeezing once before releasing. Let her go, Castellano. This is between you and me. On the contrary, Castellano's smile was cruel. This is about sending a message. You've gotten too powerful, too comfortable. Time to remind you that no one is untouchable. You made your point. Now release my sister, in exchange for the waitress.
Gladly.
Castellano gestured, and his men shoved Vera forward. She stumbled but caught herself, her eyes finding Antonio across the distance. One girl for another. Fair trade. Antonio's hand found Maya again, this time holding tight. Change of plans, and he murmured, Stay behind me.
What?
Antonio Lorenzo doesn't make deals with dead men, Antonio called out, his voice ringing with authority. Castellano laughed. Big words from a man surrounded by my soldiers. Look up, Castellano. The older man's eyes went to the rooftops, and his face went white. Red laser sights appeared on his chest, on the chests of every one of his men. Dozens of them unwavering, deadly. You think I came here unprepared? Antonio's voice was cold now, the voice of a man who'd united the city's crime families through a combination of strategy and strength. You took my sister. You threatened someone under my protection. And you thought I'd just roll over. You've forgotten who I am. You can't kill all of us. I can certainly try, and by my count, you're outgunned 3-1. Antonio stepped forward. Here's the new deal. You release Vera unharmed. You call off the bounty on Maya. And you leave New York entirely. In exchange, I let you live. You arrogant. The alternative is we all die tonight. Your choice. You have 10 seconds. Castellano's face turned purple with rage, but he wasn't stupid. He could see the snipers.
Could count the odds. Fine, he spat.
But this isn't over, Lorenzo. Yes, Antonio said quietly. It is. He nodded to Diego, who emerged from the shadows with a laptop. While you've been talking, our tech specialist has been busy. He's compiled evidence of your operation. Ledgers, communications, everything. It's currently sitting in the inbox of 5 different federal agencies, set to send if I don't stop it in. He checked his watch. 3 minutes. You leave New York tonight. You never come back. And that evidence disappears. You refuse. And by tomorrow you'll be arrested for everything from tax evasion to murder. Your empire crumbles.
Choose.
It wasn't even a choice. Castellano gestured sharply to his men, and they retreated to their vehicles. Vera ran across the open space, throwing herself into Antonio's arms. He held her tight, his eyes closing briefly in relief. But Maya's attention was on Castellano's face as he climbed into his SUV. She saw the hatred there, the promise of vengeance, and she saw his hand move to his jacket. Gun! Maya screamed, pushing Antonio and Vera aside as Castellano drew his weapon. 3 shots rang out. Maya felt fire explode in her side as she hit the ground. Antonio's voice roared her name. Return fire erupted from the rooftops, and Castellano's SUV became a death trap, bullets shredding metal and glass. Then Antonio was there pulling Maya against him, his hands frantic as they found the wound.
No, 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 Maya.
Stay with me. Is Vera? Maya gasped.
She's fine.
You saved us both. You, his voice broke. Don't you dare die on me. Don't you dare. Bossy, she managed, blood bubbling on her lips. Diego, get the car now. Antonio gathered her in his arms, cradling her against his chest as he ran. Maya's vision swam, but she could feel his heart pounding, could hear him talking to her, begging her to hold on. You promised, she whispered. Somewhere far away, just us. Yes, yes, I promise. Anywhere you want. Just stay with me. The world faded to black. But Maya's last thought was that she was safe. In Antonio's arms, she was safe. Maya took a bullet meant for Antonio and Vera, and now she's fighting for her life. Will Antonio get her to safety in time? How will this night change everything between them? And what future awaits a Mafia boss and the waitress who saved his life? The conclusion is coming, and you won't want to miss how their story ends. Keep watching to discover if love can truly conquer all. The Mediterranean sun was warm on Maya's face as she stood on the balcony of their villa overlooking the azure waters of the Italian coast. Below, she could hear Antonio and Vera laughing, arguing good-naturedly about which pasta recipe was authentic. Her hand went to her side, to the scar hidden beneath her summer dress. 3 surgeries and 2 months of recovery, but she'd survived. The bullet had missed anything vital thanks to the bulletproof vest and sheer luck. Antonio had stayed by her bedside every moment of her recovery. When she'd finally opened her eyes 3 days after the shooting, his had been the first face she'd seen, haggard, unshaven, and more beautiful than anything she'd ever witnessed. I thought I'd lost you, he'd whispered, his hand cradling her face. Can't get rid of me that easily. She'd managed. True to his word, Antonio had dismantled the Bellini operation. The evidence Leonardo compiled had been devastating. Castellano Bellini died from his wounds that night, and his organization collapsed within weeks. The price on Maya's had disappeared, and then Antonio had done something no one expected. He'd started the process of legitimizing his businesses. Not overnight. That was impossible, but slowly, methodically, moving the Lorenzo empire away from violence toward legal enterprises. It would take years, maybe decades, but he was trying for her. There you are. Strong arms wrapped around her from behind, and Antonio's lips found the sensitive spot behind her ear. Vera is making enough food for 20 people. I think she's happy we're here. Your sister is wonderful, Maya said, leaning back against his chest. She adores you. Says you're the best thing that ever happened to me. His hands spread across her stomach, protective and possessive.
She's right.
Maya turned in his arms, looking up at the man who changed her life. Antonio looked different here, relaxed, younger, with color in his face from the sun and smile lines around his eyes. He wore simple clothes and kept his gun locked away. Here he was just a man, not a monster. Any regrets? He asked quietly. About getting shot? Maybe a few.
Maya?
She touched his face, stopping his words. But about everything else?
About you?
Never. Antonio's eyes darkened with emotion. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, opening it to reveal a ring, not ostentatious, but beautiful, with a single perfect diamond. I had a whole speech planned, he said, his voice rough, about how you saved my life, how you changed me, how I can't imagine existing without you. But all of that seems inadequate. So I'll just say this. Maya Morrison, will you marry a reformed criminal who loves you more than he thought possible? Will you build a life with me away from danger, full of real things and honest conversations, and that restaurant you've always dreamed of? Tears streamed down Maya's face. Yes, God.
Yes.
He slipped the ring on her finger, and his kiss tasted like sunshine and promises and forever. When they broke apart, Vera was cheering from the kitchen window, and Maya laughed, joyful and free. Her life hadn't turned out anything like she'd planned. She'd gone from struggling waitress to Mafia boss's fiancé, from serving wine to nearly dying for love. But as Antonio pulled her close, as the Mediterranean breeze carried the scent of lemons and olive trees, Maya knew she wouldn't change a single moment. Sometimes the most dangerous choices led to the most beautiful destinations. And she and Antonio Lorenzo had all the time in the world to explore them together.
The end.
Thank you all for following this story. If you enjoyed it, please write in the comments where you're watching from and share your thoughts about this story. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video as your support is important for me to continue creating content.